this country is at war with Germany.
We had to do a job, and we did the job, and that was it.
The men had to go and fight, and the women had to take their place.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the Great Crusade.
Hello and welcome back to the Foxhole, and this week the topic we are going to be chewing the cud on is Exercise Tiger. Now, some of you super hardcore nerds, World War II nerds, will know what that name means and what that entailed, but for maybe some of you, you might not know, and I, hands up, I'm one of those. I didn't really know about Exercise Tiger. So this was another really fun one to research and learn about, yeah, which is always good, always nice to learn new things. And I think the first bit that I ever knew about it, I'm going to be honest, was from the recent trailer for the new Pressure film that's coming out, well, here in the UK in September, end of May for you lucky folks across the pond. But yeah, so this was really interesting. So, Katie, what did you find out about Exercise Tiger?
Well, Exercise Tiger, also known as Operation Tiger, was a series of practice exercises for the Allied invasion in Europe. So it was a dress rehearsal for D-Day. It took place the 22nd to the 30th of April, 1944. So about a month or so beforehand. 2 months before-ish.
Yeah.
It was a practice assault on Slapton Sands down on Devon, so the south coast of England, which has almost always baffled me.
Oh, go on. Why? Go on. Why's it baffled you?
South coast of England is very close to France, which was then enemy territory.
You've got a point. You've got a point, and as we will see, maybe that location maybe wasn't the best if they'd done it, say, the coast of Wales or Scotland, even But I suppose in a way was kind of all at this point in the war, all the waters around the UK were kind of a bit risky. You've got the Atlantic convoys coming across over to Liverpool; they were under attack. Scapa Flow at the top, could that have been at risk from, the Germans in Norway? And, like you said, the southern coast of England probably was the worst. You can see France from across Dover, So yes, as we will find out, maybe the location wasn't the best.
Yes. But they did pick the beach because it was a relatively close match for the US forces assaulting Omaha and Utah. Predominantly Omaha, though. And then you've got South Hampshire countryside at the back of and beyond the beaches with the small fields, the narrow lanes, or the hedgerows, which was very characteristic to the Normandy landscape and the bocage.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was kind of like they probably, when they were looking, they were thinking, oh, well, this is the perfect combination of everything. So let's use it rather than waste more time. Because like you said, it's only a few months before D-Day this, and it's a bit like a play, isn't it? When the dress rehearsal is put in the books that close to showtime, so to speak, you can't change it. So they couldn't suddenly, right, let's move everyone somewhere else. So I think it was the perfect mix of the beach and, like you say, the land further in as well.
So Slapton Sands had also apparently been used as an amphibious assault training before the war, and a small exercise took place in August of 1943 as well, which I didn't realise. So it was obviously a popular training ground for the military.
Yeah. Well, I think when the military finds a good place, a bit like Salisbury Plain nowadays, that's still used. In areas such as that, once they know that it's good for them, of course they're gonna keep using it. But yes, it was the whole idea with this Exercise Tiger / Operation Tiger. It was designed to be a live fire scenario. It was to train the men into this is as close as we're going to be able to get you to what it's going to be like in a few months' time. Rather than using blanks and, dummy shells, it was live fire because you don't know. You can train men as they had been doing for, years up to this point, but no one knows how they're going to react when they're in combat. So I think the higher ups were wanting, let's make it as real as possible, which unfortunately this one was a bit too real, wasn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so the surrounding area, they put up mock German defences. Um, Troops moving inland, they used obviously the live ammunition and the pre-assault bombardment and an aerial bombardment. And because of using live ammunition, they had to evacuate a 25 square miles around the area. So that was given in November of 1943, and they gave 6 weeks for residents to evacuate the villages and farms. And it wasn't just the people. So around 6,000 cattle, 12,000 sheep, and 10,000 tons of root crops, and all the farming machinery
yeah.
and implements were also removed from the area because they wanted this live bombardment, and they didn't want the civilians getting caught up in it.
Yeah, absolutely. It just takes one, shot that's a bit too off target to land on, a house, a farm, whatever, and then you've got a big mess on your hands. So I totally understand that. And it's weird thinking about, so that's quite, sounds up to this point, they've kind of thought about everything, let's move everyone away, let's, just, got the right terrain. So then when you kind of get into what went wrong with Exercise Tiger, it's almost like you think, well, if they've planned all that, how could this then happen? Really, I think it was the shocking part that I got the sense of whilst researching this topic.
Yeah, so it was a lengthy exercise altogether. The first phase lasted about 4 days. That focused it on marshalling the troops from their camps, loading the men, getting the equipment onto the landing craft. And then the evening of the 26th of April, the first wave of 30,000 assault troops boarded the transport ships and then started a sea journey to simulate the time of a crossing channel, and arrived in Slapton Stands on dawn of the 27th. The convoy was escorted by the Royal Navy, which provided 4 destroyers, 3 motor torpedo boats, and 2 motor gunboats. So there's a fair bit of naval things involved.
Yeah, again, I think they wanted to simulate, they knew they were going to have a lot of ships off the coast of Normandy. So this was a kind of a small percentage of getting the troops used to being on a boat whilst being surrounded by other, boats in a sort of flotilla kind of way. I don't know what the ruling is on what classes as a flotilla, but never mind. But again, yeah, it's just to get them used to the environment, so it's not, a big shock come the day of days.
Yeah. So a key part in this was there was 3 motor torpedo boats patrolling off the coast of Cherbourg to intercept any German warships that might venture into the English Channel.
Mm. Mm. But motor torpedo boats looking for warships, they're kind of forgetting about U-boats there. You need something a bit more substantial, because we know how sneaky the Germans can be.
Oh yes.
And yes, so you've got those kind of patrolling a little bit, which is better than nothing, but yeah, I think it could have been a bit better. So what I could find, it was to do with the timings that really upset things for Exercise Tiger. So the initial H hour, which if you don't know, that's just the time of when something will start. Doesn't H doesn't stand for anything. It's just a military term that's been used for quite a while now. So the original H hour was scheduled for 7:30 a.m. and that was actually pushed back an hour by US Admiral Don Moon. And so again, was that to simulate orders changing, or was that to do with the weather? Because again, that could happen on, actual D-Day. But with that, not everyone got that message. Unfortunately, you got to think how many people. You said 30,000 troops, and that's just the troops. You've got the people on the boats who are manning the boats. Those messages have got to get to those. So this was the big first blunder, that this message wasn't passed on to everyone, unfortunately.
So the naval bombardment that was happening, that should have stopped in time for the soldiers to get onto the beach, should have finished 50 minutes before they were due to land, because then the engineers and the mine disposal crew were going to go onto the beach and basically clear the beach to make sure there was no live ammo, no shells that didn't go off. That obviously didn't happen. So everybody piles onto the beach, resulting in several casualties. The situation was then made worse for the troops on the beach because they were then unable to communicate with the warships to call off the bombardment completely.
Exactly. Yeah. And then kind of further, kind of going back from the beach, we're saying how the sneaky the Germans can be. This is kind of fast forwarding a little bit. So shortly after midnight on April the 28th, 9 E-boats with 5 S-boat flotilla under the command, and I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, so I do apologize. They were under the command of Korvettenkapitan Bernd Klung, and he departed Cherbourg for patrols in the English Channel. So again, the Allies knew that there was going to be possibly German interruption, and of course, because they will have had an idea, they will have seen all this going on from afar. So it's no wonder that they start patrolling in the English Channel. So you've got that to contend with, as well. And like you were saying before, there was a little flotilla of British vessels. So it was HMS Azalea and HMS Scimitar. Oh well, sorry, I beg my pardon. So it's meant to be two. It was meant to be 2 ships from what I could find. It was only HMS Azalea, because HMS Scimitar was still in Plymouth undergoing repairs, which is very reminiscent of nowadays, where all our warships are being refitted and we only have one available. Of course we do. So again, it's this kind of, everything seems well planned, and then just little things start going wrong. There's only one warship protecting part of the convoy, and the Germans are nearby, so it's all kind of bubbling up. And yeah, things have already started to go wrong.
Yeah, 2 landing ship tanks were sunk by the torpedoes. A third was set on fire, but was able to return to shore. 631 soldiers and sailors were killed aboard those 3 LSTs. A fourth was damaged by friendly fire from another LST, which was attempting to fire on the E-boats. The E-boats eventually withdrew after coming under fire from the LSTs and HMS Azalea, but hundreds of US servicemen were killed during that. But they only found 248 bodies were recovered, and they're now lying at Brookwood Cemetery in Surrey.
Oh, well, I mean, it's sad that they didn't find everyone, but it's nice that they have a final resting place. And obviously, with this part of Exercise Tiger that went wrong, HMS Azalea, from what I could find, apparently it led the LSTs in a straight line, which, yeah, rather than being kind of dotted about in kind of a better orientation. So apparently, that came under scrutiny after this. Obviously, an investigation took place as to what happened, why did it go wrong. So then they could take these learnings and apply them to, the actual D-Day. I mean, it's, thank goodness this wasn't the actual D-Day. I mean, it should never have happened anyway. These things shouldn't have gone wrong. But looking at it from another side of it, that, they could take these learnings and digest them over the coming months in the lead up to D-Day. And yeah, it's just a bit of an unfortunate kind of wrong place, wrong time, and didn't quite plan for every eventuality, I guess.
I found that 10 American officers were lost at sea on the 28th who knew details about D-Day.
Oh.
So D-Day was actually nearly called off until all 10 and the papers they were carrying were found. And then survivors of the disaster were sworn to secrecy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, why did they have the papers on in the first place?
Yeah.
You hear nowadays about, oh, this guy got on a bus with a briefcase that contained sensitive MOD information. You're just like, well, why did you have it in the first place? And why was he on a bus? Like, when he take his own car or pay for him in a taxi? I don't know. Yes, but again, trying to be positive. You know, surely they learnt from that, and maybe that's why the security was kind of extra tight in the proper run up to D-Day. Because they knew, right, we almost messed up one time. Let's really make sure it doesn't happen again. Which I totally get.
Yeah. Another thing that also baffles me about Exercise Tiger is that how can 8 E-boats get into the bay undetected? Did we not have people looking out for these sorts of things?
Again, yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you? We've already, kind of said that there was a few warships around, maybe not as many as there should have been. And at this point in the war, you know what Allied ships look like, and you know what German ships look like. So if you're on a conning tower on a ship, you're keeping an eye out. That doesn't look right. I should really report that to my senior commander or whatever. So yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, why it's just like, oh, there they are. Okay, I guess they're one of ours. Okay.
Yeah, looks fine.
Yeah.
Well, the tragedy wasn't covered up, but it was kept out of the public eye because they thought it would lower morale and everything. So it wasn't until the 1980s when the memorial was erected in Slapton Sands.
Wow, I did not know that.
And the memorial is a Sherman tank, and that was sunk during the exercise. So that was raised and then placed on its stand as a memorial to the US personnel that died during Exercise Tiger.
I think whenever you come across a story about a training accident as this is, it's kind of extra sad. I don't want to make it a competition about a death is a death in the war, but when it can be avoided, in a training exercise, I think that just has a bit more impact, doesn't it? Because combat, it's up to not complete luck, but a lot of it is luck. Whereas something like this, if it was just that little bit extra care was taken, like you said, about why didn't they notice the E-boats? How did they get in? The location, things like that. I think that kind of affects it a little bit more because these lives shouldn't have been lost so early. And yes, you could argue that, yeah, they would have gone into combat on D-Day and they could have lost their lives on D-Day anyway. But, that's not the point. If it can be avoided, it can be avoided.
Yeah. And on a more recent note, so in April 2020, the wrecks of 2 of the LSTs that were sunk were protected by the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport on the advice of Historic England. So that means divers can dive the wrecks and have a look round,
wow.
but they're protected, so you can't like loot them or damage them or anything, but at least they're protected.
Yeah, and that's kind of good again because that's another good way of getting people interested in the hobby. If you're kind of a diver and you've kind of got a loose interest in history, and then say you have a friend who goes, "Oh, we should go see these LSTs," and then guess what? They go down the rabbit hole, and they become afflicted like us all. And like I always say, the more the merrier. And so yeah, that is a really nice really nice thing that's been done, rather than kind of gatekeep it and go, no, you can't go there, you can't, you can't see that sort of thing. Because chances are they're going to disappear eventually. They're not going to be there forever. The sea will, swallow them up, I suppose. So yeah, that's a nice little touch.
Yeah, that's all I've got for it.
Yeah, I think we've covered that pretty well. Yes, an unfortunate event, but like we said, hopefully the learnings were taken forward, and they will have saved many, many lives on D-Day. And yeah, if you're down south, if you're forever down south, pay a visit to the Sherman Tank. It's on my list to visit, as many other places around the UK are. And if you do visit, send us a picture. We'd love to see that on Instagram or here on the YouTube or wherever. So yes, that was really interesting. That was really interesting.
Yeah, so that was a good one. So that was Exercise Tiger. So join us again next week for another episode about something World War II related. So until then, we'll see you next week.